If you look at why people are buying stocks right now, I think everybody is searching for more upside. And especially after such a strong rally, it's been more difficult to find. So then trying to answer that question of where are we in the market cycle? Where are we in the business cycle? And what kind of stocks win at this point so that we can find more upside? And we did a bunch of analysis looking at what might happen to the yield curve, what might happen to the dollar if and when the Fed finally does start cutting rates. And one of the things that is consistent is that you do want companies that are kicking out good margins, that have healthy profits,
Right.
and are able to produce that kind of cash flow.
Do we grow our way in the denominator, price to cash flow, price to this, price to EBITDA? Do we grow the denominator into a more intelligent valuation?
Well, you know what's interesting is that if you look at valuations, there continues to be this comparison between now and what happened in the early 2000s. And valuations compared to then are really not that outrageous. They're frothy, and in particular pockets, they're perhaps higher than most investors would want as an entry point. But I do think over the next couple years, if we manage to avert some big catastrophe, we do need earnings to continue to grow. We do need them to come through in order to just support the current level of valuations. And then it becomes this awkward mental exercise of, okay, if the PE is coming down, that's actually a good thing if earnings are going up, but the price of the index hasn't necessarily moved all that much. I think we've been used to these double-digit returns, and we may enter a period where we're in that more regular return era of mid-single digits, but with earnings growth that's still strong.
Liz, given the move we've had off those October levels here in the stock market, the S&P 500 up, over 25%, what sectors still screen attractive to you guys, if any?
Yeah, well, that goes back to the earlier part of this conversation is where do you find that upside? And look, growth companies, particularly large cap, still seem attractive compared to small cap. You start with some of those big buckets. What's better, large or small? And at certain points in the business cycle, large cap does tend to do better. At certain types of yield curve environments, large cap also tends to do better. So if we expect that at some point later this year, which I do expect, we will experience what's called a bull steepener, meaning that the short end of the curve comes down and the long end of the curve either stays put or rises a little bit. In that environment, you do want those large cap companies, some of them growth. You do also want some of those defensive names. And although it's a bull market, there are defensive sectors that can do really well in a bull market. And utilities is one of those that has done well this year. I would still be staying away from sectors that start with the word consumer, though.
Liz, SoFi has such a heritage of studying the technology of America within the AI frenzy. What does our technology look like forward, and can you invest in it?
Well, I heard a quote last week that was sort of resurrected from Bill Gates. It goes something along the lines of technology is always overestimated in the first 2 years, but underestimated in the 10-year period. And I think what's happening with AI right now is obviously we've got a lot of enthusiasm, and there are some real fundamentals behind that trade and behind that theme. The reality is that all themes go through a life cycle, and we're likely to see at least somewhat of a boom and bust in the AI theme, and things are going to change quite a bit over time, much like what happened with the internet theme. We didn't really know how to make money off of that early on. And I think that's where we are with AI. And at some point, we'll have to come back down to earth of we're not going to come up with these profits in the next 12 months. So I think that's sort of where that theme sits today.